Choreb Beruach, Sword of the Spirit. Interpreted and narrated by Wendy.
Shemot, Exodus.
Chapter 2.
And a man from the house of Lehi went and took a daughter of Lehi. Then the woman conceived and bore a son, and she saw his goodliness. Therefore she hid him for 3 moons. However, when she could not hide him any longer, then she took for him an ark of bulrushes. Moreover, she daubed it with tar and pitch. Then she put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the bank of the river. Furthermore, his sister stood from afar, to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Paro came down to wash in the river, and her maidens walked upon the side of the river. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. Moreover, when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. Therefore she had compassion upon him, and said, "This is one of the Aibarim lads." Then his sister asked Paro's daughter, "Should I go and call a nurse for you of the Aibari women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Therefore Paro's daughter answered her, "Go." Then the maid went and called the mother of the child. Then Paro's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give you wages." Therefore the woman took the child and nursed him. Thus the lad was grown. So she brought him to Paro's daughter, and he became her son. Then she called his name Musha, to draw, and she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And it came to pass, during the days when Musha was grown, that he went out to his brethren, and looked upon their burdens. And he spied a Mitzri striking an Aibari, one of his brethren. Then he looked this way and that way, and when he saw no man, he slew the Mitzri, and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 of the Aibari men strove together. And unto him whom did the wrong he asked, "Why do you strike your fellow?" Therefore he replied, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you intend to kill me, as you did the Mitzri?" Then Musha feared and said, "Surely this thing is known." Now when Paro heard this thing, he sought to slay Musha. But Musha fled from the face of Paro, and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Furthermore, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. Then they came and drew. Also, they filled the troughs of water for their father's flock. But the shepherds came and drove them away. Therefore Musha stood up and helped them, and he watered their flock. Then, when they came to the friend of Al, their father, he asked, "How have you come so soon today?" So they answered, "A Mitzri delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds. Also, he drew enough for us, and watered the flocks." Therefore he asked his daughters, "And where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Musha was content to dwell with the man. Furthermore, he gave Musha Zipporah, his daughter, and she bore a son, and he called his name Gershom, exiled people. For he said, "I have been driven out into a foreign land."